Hi everyone, it's me Terry from the Yarn Joy podcast, and this is my very first video tutorial. In today's video, I want to show you what is my favorite go-to join-as-you-go method for joining squares together, specifically granny squares. Okay, so now this is not my method that I invented. I believe it's called the flat braid join method, but this is my favorite go-to method, and I've had people ask me how I do it, and so I wanted to go ahead and make this video and have it on my YouTube channel, so then that way people can find it. Okay, so all I did was I made some granny squares, some 4-round granny squares, okay? And I'm going to use these to demonstrate this method. Okay, so for when you're going to start this and you have your very first granny square, you take your yarn. Now you want to have this is like the border color that you want to use, that you'll be using around all of them to tie them together. Okay, so I go into my first corner and I just join, or I pull up a loop, and then I make make sure I'm in the camera here. So I pull up a loop and I make one chain to lock it into place to attach my yarn, okay? Okay, now I'm going to go back into that same hole there, and I'm going to make a single crochet. Okay, let me zoom up just a little bit. I think it'll be easier for you to see. Okay, so let's see if this works. Okay, so we have one single crochet in there. Now I'm going to chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then I'm going to single crochet again back into the same hole, that corner space. Okay. Now I'm going to chain 1. Okay, and then for this one, normally what you do all the way across is we're going to put a stitch into every other stitch across. But for the first one, since you have these 2 stitches in that corner, pretty much this single crochet pretty much, to me, it covers up the very first stitch in this 3 double crochet grouping on the granny square. And so for this first one, I usually go ahead and skip 2 stitches, the first one, the second one, and go into this third one, okay? Just because it would be really close if you put it in the second one. So I go ahead and see. So I chain 1, and then I'm going to skip that stitch. Actually, I'm going to skip the first 2, like I said, and I'm going to go into this, which is the last double crochet of the shell, and I'm going to do a single crochet. Okay, and then chain 1, and then now it works up where I'm going to, what I did was these granny squares, I put chain 1s in between the shells, and so I'm going to skip that chain 1 space, because that's like a space, that I'm like a stitch that I'm counting, and then I'm going to go into the first double crochet of the next shell and do a single crochet, and then chain 1, and then I'm going to skip the next stitch and then single crochet into the next one, chain 1. Now I'm to the next chain space, so I'm going to skip that one. I'm counting it like a stitch, and I'm going to get single crochet into the next stitch, which happens to be the first double crochet in that shell. So I do a single crochet there, chain 1, skip the second this stitch, the next stitch, and I'm going to single crochet in the next one, chain 1, and then I'm going to skip this chain and put a single crochet into the next one, chain 1, and then now this one, see, if I only skipped 1 stitch, I would be putting a stitch right here into that last single crochet, but I need to get into the corner. So this one I'm actually skipping 2 stitches, and I'm going to single crochet into that corner space. Okay, so single crochet there, And so now that I'm in the corner, I'm going to, instead of chain 1, I'm going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to single crochet back into that corner space. Okay, so we've got there's our first side, okay? So now we're going to do the same thing all the way around, okay? So I'll do this next side with you, and then I'll let you do the other 2 sides by yourself. Okay, so here we are in the corner, and we have the single crochet, chain 3, single crochet there in the corner. Okay, so now we're going to chain 1, and like I said, for the very first one, I go ahead and skip these first two stitches, and I'm going to single crochet into the third double crochet of that shell, and then chain 1. Now we're going to skip that chain 1 space, and we're going to single crochet into the next space. Okay, chain 1, and then we're going to skip the next stitch and single crochet into the next one. Chain 1, skip this this chain space and single crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, skip this stitch, single crochet in the next one. Chain 1, skip the chain, single crochet in the first double crochet of that shell. Okay, and then remember what I told you, chain 1. Okay, now remember what I told you, that now we're wanting to end up in the corner space, and so for this one I'm actually going to be skipping 2 stitches, and then I single crochet into the corner space. Okay, and then since we're in the corner space, we're going to chain 3 between the stitches instead of chaining 1. So 1, 2, 3, and then single crochet back into the corner space. Okay, so that, and then we're going to chain 1, okay, and then remember I'm going to skip 2 stitches there to get to the third double crochet of that shell. Okay, then chain 1, and then, okay, so then we're going to keep going. That's where we're going to go across this row, and then we're going to go across this row, and then I will meet you up where we're going to join here, okay? Okay, so continue on. If you have to rewind and watch me do these other sides again to get the stitch down, feel free to do that, and I'll meet you up where we're going to end up when we end up back at the beginning of our round, okay? Okay, so we have now went around all 3 sides of my square, okay, and now I'm right back at the beginning again. Okay, so I did a single crochet into that first double crochet of that shell stitch, and then I chained 1, okay, and now I'm going to skip those 2, and I'm going to go into the corner. Well, normally that's how we would do it, but see, we've already done the corner stitches, the single crochet, chain 3, single crochet, and so for this one all I have to do is, after I chain 1 after that single crochet, then I'm going to slip stitch into the first single crochet of that round, and that will end our round. Okay, so I'm going to go into, see if you can see that, you're going to go into that single crochet and you're going to do a slip stitch. Okay, and now I've completed my whole entire round, see? Okay? Okay, so now round 2 is what we're going to do next. Okay, so we always want to get into the corner to start, and so right now I'm above that single crochet, so I want to slip stitch into the very next, with this chain 3 space, so that way we'll be into the chain 3 space. See that? Okay, so now this round is the last round that you have to do to start for your border, okay? So this is the round that you'll be working on, and sometimes you'll have to connect them to the other squares, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so but for your very first square, you want to go ahead and go all the way around and do a whole complete square, okay? So for this one, for starting round 2, we slip stitched, we're now into this chain 3 space. So now I'm going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to slip stitch, because on this row we're only doing chains and slip stitches. Okay, the previous row we were doing chains and single crochets. This one we're going to be doing chains and slip stitches. Okay, so we slip stitched in there to get into that space, and then we chained 4, and then now I'm going to slip stitch back into that corner space. Okay, slip stitch. Okay, so now the last row we chained 1 between the single crochets on the sides. Well, this one we're going to chain 2 and then slip stitch. So from here we're going to chain 2. Okay, now we're going to skip the first single crochet, and we're going to be working in these chain 1 spaces across. Okay, we're going to skip the single crochets. So in this first chain 1 space we're going to do a slip stitch. Okay, then we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to slip stitch into the next chain 1 space. Chain 2, slip stitch into the next chain 1 space. Okay, and you just keep doing that across until you get to the next corner. So chain 2, slip stitch into the next chain 2 space. Chain 1 space, sorry. Chain 2, slip stitch into the next chain 1 space. There, sorry, I might have been saying it wrong. Okay, chain 2, slip stitch into the next chain 1 space. Chain 2, slip stitch into the next chain 1 space. Okay, chain 2, slip stitch into the next chain 1 space, and we're now, the chain 3 space, sorry, we're now into the corner. So we slip stitch into it. Okay, so you're having, along these sides, you're having slip stitch, chain 2, slip stitch. Okay, so now we got into the corner and we slip stitch, but now instead of chaining 2, we're going to chain 4. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, and then we're going to slip stitch back into that corner space. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing on this over here that we did over here. Okay, so on the sides we're going to chain 2 and then slip stitch into the chain spaces across, right? So you're going to chain 2, slip stitch into this chain 1 space, chain 2, oops, okay, slip stitch into the next chain 2 space, chain 1 space, sorry, chain 2, slip stitch into that chain space, chain 2, slip stitch into that chain space, chain 2, slip stitch into this chain 1 space, chain 2, slip stitch into this chain space, I'll call it that, chain 2, slip stitch into this chain space. Okay, chain 2, and now we're going to into the corner again. So in the corner we're going to do slip stitch, chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then slip stitch back in. Okay, and then you're going to continue across. So then you're going to do this side, chain 2, slip stitch into that chain space, chain 2, slip stitch into that chain space, chain 2, slip stitch into that chain space, okay, of the white that I did. Okay, do it all the way across. You go over here, you slip stitched here, chain 2, slip stitch into that chain space, and then you're going to chain 2 and then slip stitch into the corner. Okay, and then you chain 4 and then slip stitch into that corner. Okay, and then on the next side you would do the same thing, except you have chain 2s in between the slip stitches. Okay, so if you need to rewind and pause the video and rewind and see how I did that again, if you hadn't caught on how I did it yet, then go ahead. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I've already finished this first square. Let me show you that one. It's this one right here. See that? So this is got the 2 rounds, just like what we were doing, okay? It's got the 2 rounds on the square, okay? And so I've completed it because the first square, you do both rounds of that edging complete, okay? So after you've got your completed square, then that's your first one, okay? Now, your next square, you're going to do exactly the same thing that you did in the first one, okay? You're going to do the round 1, which is the single crochet, chain 3, and single crochet in the corner. Sorry, right here. And then chain 1, single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, and of course where the chain 1 is, you're skipping a space, except for the first one. Remember, you skipped 2, but you can rewind and do that part of the square along with my tutorial to get you that far, okay? So now I'm going to pretend like this one that I just did with you is my second square, because I've already done my first one, see? Okay, let me zoom out just a little bit. So, whoop, wrong way. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. So here's my first one. Here's the second one, okay? Now, for this one, I'm going to show you how to attach, okay? So when you're going to attach a side, I need to go back just a little bit to get back to this corner, okay? Okay. So for this one, this is how you do if you're going to attach 2 squares together, and this is the simplest one because you're only having to attach just one side, okay, and that's it, okay? So you complete round 1 of your edging separate, and then you slip stitch into the corner piece, just like we did over here. Slip stitch into that corner piece. And then you do the slip stitch, chain 4, slip stitch, and then chain 2, slip stitch into the chain space, chain 2, slip stitch into the chain space, and so on until you get all the way to the next corner, okay? And then for this one, I went ahead and did an extra side, which is fine, because all you need to do is connect one side to this square, okay? And I always like to leave at least one side unworked that I can finish up after I do the connecting row, okay? So let's work on that then. Okay, so here I am, I'm coming up to the corner. Let me zoom up a little bit so you can see. Okay, I think that'll work. So I'm going to come to this corner, I'm going to slip stitch into that corner, okay? And normally we would slip stitch, chain 4, slip stitch, right? Okay, so this time we're going to slip stitch, chain 2, and then we're going to stop, okay? And now we're going to start connecting to our number 1 square, okay? So the way we do that is I'm going to go ahead and turn them this way because this is the direction that I like to work them in. So, oops, I'm not in the frame, sorry. Okay. So for this one, remember when I went into that corner, I chained 2 instead of chaining 4, so I did like half of the loop, okay? So there I'm going to pull up the loop a little bit, take my hook out, okay? Now I'm going to go into my number 1 square and find the corner loop, which is the chain 4 spaces, right? Okay, so I'm going to go into that square. I'm always going to go into the square from the top to the bottom, okay? So I'm going to put my hook into that chain 4 loop from the top to the bottom, right? And then I'm going to go back and get this loop that I took the hook out of, and I'm going to put that loop onto the hook, okay? And then I want to pull up my yarn a little bit, the slack, and then I'm going to pull that loop through that, pull the loop through that 4 chain loop that I stuck my my hook through, and then I want to chain 1, and that's like locking it into place, okay? Now, remember that normally the corners of that second round had chain 4 loops in the corners, right? Okay, so I did the first 2 before I looped it through the loop, I guess, yeah. Looped it through, pulled it through this loop, let's say that. And so now to complete that 4 chain corner, I need to have 2 more chains, right? Because I did half of them over here. While looping it through there and locking it in place with a chain, that's actually serves as my 3rd chain of that chain 4 loop, okay? So I'm going to chain 1 more, and that will be my chain, that will be my chain 4, right? And my 4th chain, sorry. And then I'm going to go back into the corner space of my number 2 square, and I'm going to do my slip stitch just like regular, okay? Now I'm going to chain 2, just like I'm going to go into the next chain space, which would be right here, okay? But instead of going over there, I need to connect it to this square, okay? So I'm going to pull my loop up, and then I'm going to take my hook out, and I'm going to go find the next loop. And you can kind of see them, because see how they make little scalloped edges, see? So that's where the loops are. So I'm going to go from top to bottom, and I'm going to go into the next loop, and I'm going to put my working loop, I guess you'd say, back on my hook, draw up my slack a little bit, and then I'm going to pull it through that loop, okay, like that. And then I'm going to chain 1 and lock it into place, okay. Now remember, the side chains of that second round had 2 chains in each loop, I guess you'd say. Remember, it's 4 chains in the corner and then 2 chains on the side. So this one, I did chain 2 before I went through that loop, and so I don't need to put any more extra chains. And I'm going to go into this, my second square, and connect it to this second loop there, see? And I'm going to go from the top down through the bottom, just like regular. Just like I did over here, always from the top down to the bottom. And then I'm going to just do a regular slip stitch, okay? So next one, chain 2. See, there's my chain 2. So I don't need any other extra chains before I connect to this one, except that I do 1 chain to lock my loop onto this previous square. Okay, so I pulled my loop up, took my hook out. Now I'm looking for the next loop, which would be this one, okay? Corresponding loop. And then I go top to bottom with my hook, and then I loop the working yarn loop, and then I pull that through that chain space, okay? I chain 1 just to lock it into place, and then I go back into, and now I go into the next chain space on my second square from top to bottom, okay? And then I do a slip stitch to attach it. Okay, so chain 2, and then I just keep doing that all the way across, okay? So draw up a loop, take my hook out, go to my next one, my next loop on the number 1 square, and then I pick that loop back up, the working one, draw up the slack, pull it through the loop, I lock it into place with 1 chain, and then I go into the next chain space on my second square and do a slip stitch to attach it. Okay, chain 2, okay, and drop a loop, go to the next one, the next loop on number 1 square. From the front to back, I put my hook through, I pick up the working yarn loop, I pull it back through that loop, chain 1 to lock it into place, and then slip stitch into the next chain loop, chain loop of square number 2. Chain 1, no, sorry, chain 2, and then I go into the next loop on square number 1 from the front to the back, pick up my working yarn, draw up the slack, pull it through, chain to lock it into place, and then slip stitch into the next loop on the number 2 square by slip stitching it to attaching it, okay? Chain 2, draw up a loop, or draw the loop up a little bit so you don't lose it. And I will even kind of hold on to this chain 2 just to make sure this is not going to go anywhere. Okay, and so then I go over here, go to the next loop that I need to attach to from the front to back, put my hook through, put the loop back on my hook, draw up the slack a little bit, pull it through the loop, chain 1 to lock it into place, and then attach it on this side with a slip stitch into the next loop. Okay, we're almost to the corner. Chain 2, go on the next loop, which would be this one. Okay, put it back on my hook, pull it through, chain 1 to lock it in, and then attach it with a slip stitch over on this side. Okay, chain 2. Okay, now I'm in the second to the last, or the last one before the corner loop. Okay, so I'm going to go front to back into the loop, put my working loop back on the hook, pull it through, chain 1 to lock it into place, and then I'm going to go into the corner space of this square number 2 with a slip stitch. Okay, and now remember, the chain loops that are in the corners are chain 4s, okay? So here I'm going to chain 2, which is half of it, okay? Pull it up, hold on to it there, get my hook and put it into the corner loop of my square number 1, put the loop back on my hook, draw up the slack, pull it through the loop, chain 1, and that's going to act as my chain 3 of my chain 4 loop. And so I need to chain 1 more to make the 4th chain, and then I'll go back into that corner space with a slip stitch there. Okay, so see, now we have it attached. Okay, so the only other thing we need to do now is, since we started in this corner, I need to go across this side right here and to finish it up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So we're in the chain, the loop in the corner loop right now. So we need to chain 2 and then slip stitch into the that chain space there. Chain 2, slip stitch into the chain space. That's all we have to do all the way across. Chain 2, slip stitch into the chain space. Oops. Chain 2, slip stitch into the chain space. Chain 2, slip stitch into the chain space. Okay, chain 2, slip stitch into the chain space. Chain 2, slip stitch into the chain space. Chain 2. Now we're ready to go into the corner, but this corner already has a slip stitch, chain 4 slip stitch, because it's our first one. And so instead of slip stitching into the corner, so we don't need to do that, we're going to slip stitch into the very first slip stitch, okay, and that will connect it. Okay, so there, and we do slip stitch. Okay, and then that's it. Okay, and then all we have to do now is to cut our yarn, which I don't have my scissors here close. How unprepared am I? Sorry. So we're going to cut our yarn and finish off, okay? And then we'll have 2, let me zoom out here. Oh, wrong direction again. There you go. So see, now we have 2 connected, okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and work on this. So the next thing you're going to do is, now you will pick your third square, okay? And you're going to do the same thing. You're going to do round 1, which is single crochet in the corner, chain 3, single crochet, and then chain 1, single crochet by skipping 2, right? And then from there you're going to do single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, chain 1, and so rewind the tape. Rewind. It's like it's a tape. I'm old school. Reverse or go backwards, whatever, and go back where I show you the round 1. Okay, so if you need to do that, so you're going to do round 1 complete all the way around, and then round 2 you're going to do the first side, and then you'll stop, and then you're going to connect. So what I'm going to do, go ahead and do your third one, and go all the way around, okay? And then you can continue on doing this where you're just chaining, you're going to connect just one side just like I did this one, okay? And so you could do that, you can either do that and do it the whole width of what you're wanting to do, okay? And then that's usually what I do. So it'll be the same thing as I did here because you're only connecting one side. See that one seam and the rest is just regular, okay? And one seam and the regular, okay? Now, when you're gonna start the second round, the second row, your first one is going to be exactly the same because you're going to do round one of the edging, and then round two you're going to get up to, you can do one side and then connect it and then finish the rest like the regular border. Or you can do two sides, just as long as you have one side free where you're going to do the regular type border without joining to get to the beginning, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and prepare this one and attach it because it's just got one seam, just like we did this one, okay? So you can rewind it and follow it again if you need to, okay? So I'll meet you back when I have this one. Go ahead and I'm going to finish it and connect it, okay? And then I will show you how you connect two sides, because see, when you're going to complete this, you're going to have two sides that you have to connect, and that's it. So and then the way you put your squares together, you don't have to worry about doing more than that, and more than just joining two sides, okay? So let me get up to that point, and you can also work across as much as you want, or you can do these two and then attach your third one here with just one seam, okay? So you can get to where I'm going to be, so then you can see how we attach two sides, okay? And I'll meet you back when I get ready. Okay, so as you can see, I've got 3 squares attached to each other, okay? So now, just like this one, I did this one where I only had to attach one side. So this would be like I'm starting the second row of my blanket, okay? So the very first one, you do exactly like these other ones where you just attach one side, okay? So now I'm going to show you how, when you have one here, that you have to attach two sides, okay? So I've got my 4th square here, and I went ahead and did the round one. Okay, and what this round one is doing is, let me zoom up a little bit here. Okay, so this round one, what it's doing is creating the loop stitches, which is the chain 1 spaces, and that's what we use to do the attaching back and forth between the squares, okay? So I'm finishing up the round one of that border, and so I'm up to where I'm going to go into the chained one, and I'm going to go into this corner space, although, well, normally I would, but see, when I started, I put the complete set, the chain and the single crochet, chain 3 single crochet, I put that all into the corner stitch already, and so all I need to do is slip stitch into the first single crochet. So let me do that. Okay, now I'm going to slip stitch into the loop, the corner loop, so that I can get into the corner, okay? Now remember, from now on, we're going to do, in the corner, we're going to do slip stitch, chain 4 slip stitch in the corners, but then in this, along the side, we're going to do chain 2 slip stitch into these loops that we made in round 1, right? The chain 1 loops. So we're going to do, let me go ahead and do the corner. So I already slip stitched in there, so now I'm going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to slip stitch back into the corner, okay, and then now I'm ready to go down the side. So chain 2, slip stitch into the chain 1 space, right? So chain 2, slip stitch into the chain 1 space, okay, chain 2, slip stitch into chain 1 space, and keep going across. Chain 2, slip stitch into the chain 1 space, chain 2, slip stitch into the chain 1 space, chain 2, okay, just like we've been doing, slip stitch into the chain 1 space, chain 2, slip stitch into the chain 1 space, chain 2, okay, now we're going into the corner, so slip stitch, Okay, now remember the corner is slip stitch, chain 4, slip stitch, okay? But now I'm going to get, now that I've done one complete side, this is the way I usually do it. I do round 1 all the way around, and then when I'm going to do round 2 of this border, I will do one side of it from one corner to the next corner, and then I stop, okay? And then if I'm going to only have to connect one side, then I'll do that side being connecting, and then I'll finish around here like I did the regular, which is slip stitch, chain 2 into the loop, and you're not connecting anything, okay? Now if I have to connect 2 sides, sorry, then I do that. So I always know I will do one side regular, and then I'll start doing my connecting. So here I'll be connecting 2 sides, this side and this side, and then I'll have one side remaining, see, to get down to where I'm going to finish off. Okay, so as a rule, that's what I do. On the second row, I'll just do one side, and then I'll start the connecting, okay? So I'm into that corner, and now I'm going to start the connecting. Remember, the corners has chain 4. Okay, so now we have these one row done, and then I've got one side of round 2. So I'm going to start connecting it. Okay, so let me bring this forward so you can see both the edges there. This right here, of course, would be an end that I will be weaving in, but I'll just put that under there for right now. Okay, so I'm in the corner, so I'm going to chain 2, getting ready to do the chain 4 loop, right? Okay, so chain 2. Now I'm pull up a loop, and go down into the corner loop from the front to the back, just like I did before. Okay, and then hook my loop up there, pull it tight, not tight, but you know, pull up the slack, and then bring it through that loop. I'm going to chain 1 to lock it into place. And remember, this is a chain 4 loop, and so I need to chain another one to complete that loop, and then go into the corner. Okay, now chain 2. Okay, now I'm going to find my second loop, which would be, sorry, that straggler, I should have weaved it in and I didn't. Okay, now I moved it out of the way. So the second loop is right there, okay? So I'm going to go from front to back, underneath there, going to pick up my loop, draw up the slack, and then I'm going to pull it through that loop, chain 1 to lock it into place, and then I'm going to connect it to the next loop on this side, okay? So front to back, and then I'm just going to do a slip stitch, okay? Now chain 2, draw it up just a little bit and hold on to it, go over here to the next loop, front to back, okay, and then I'm going to hook it back on and pull it through that loop, chain 1 to lock it into place, and then go over here and connect it with a slip stitch into the next loop, okay? So I'm just gonna see, I'm like putting it together, okay? So chain 2, pull it up, and go to find my next loop, which would be there, okay, front to back, hook it back onto my loop, pull it up the slack, and then pull it through, chain 1 to lock it into place, and then front to back on the loop on this side, this next square, to connect it with a slip stitch, okay, chain 2, keep doing that across, okay, so loop right there, all right, back to front on the next loop, hook up your loop, pull it through, lock it into place with the chain, and then slip stitch into the loop on the other square. So let's just keep working that same way until we get up to the corner up here, okay? I'm going to connect it. Chain 2. Go into the next one. Chain to lock it into place. Slip stitch to connect it on the other side. Chain 2. Draw it up. Go into the next one. Hook it back on and pull it through. Chain to lock it into place. Slip stitch to connect it on that side. chain 2, go into the second to the last one right before the corner, pull it through, chain to lock it in place, slip stitch into the corner loop, okay, chain 2. Okay, so now we need to find the corner loop over here. If you kind of pull them apart a little bit, you can see this. See, here was the corner loop on this one for round 1, and so the corner loop for round 2 would be right there, right? Okay, so that's where we're going to pull our loop through. So tighten it up, pull it through, okay? Lock it into place with a chain, okay? Now, I'm almost ready to go back into this corner, but I'm going to check over here and see I have a corner loop here, but then if you look here with square number 2, that's the corner loop from round 1, and round 2, see, it's got a corner loop here. So what I like to do is, besides hooking onto this corner loop, I take my hook out, pull up the loop a little bit, take it out, hang on to it, and then I go ahead and go into that corner loop too, because see, we're going to go along this side to connect these two together, see? So I want to go ahead and go into that corner loop, okay, and then pull it through there. Okay, and then I do another chain to lock it into place, and now I'm going to go into the corner, okay, of the newest square. Okay, so now, see, we have, let me zoom out, if I go the right way here, wait, see, okay, so see, now we have 4 squares, and I've got this connected. Now I need to connect this side, see, and then we'll be finished, okay? So what I like to do is kind of work from the same direction. So I'm going to turn my squares this way, okay, so then I can connect across down that row, that line there, okay? So so now I've done the corners loop, and now I'm going to chain 2, and I'm going to start working down this way, okay? So chain 2, and then draw up a loop. Well, I'm going to zoom up a little bit again, so then you can see what I'm doing there. Okay, so draw up a loop, hold on to it. Now we're going to find the second loop going down this side, which would be right there, okay? And then you do front to back, just like always. Loop it onto your hook, pull it through, chain to lock it into place, and now we're going to go into the second loop there, front to back, with a slip stitch to connect it, okay? Chain 2, now we're going to do the same thing across. Pull up the loop, I'll find the next loop, which is, whoops, right there, and then I'm going to hook it on, pull it through, chain 1 to lock it, and then I'll go into the next one to connect it, okay? Chain 2, pull it up. I'm going to go here for the next one, front to back, lock it into place with the chain, and then connect it with a slip stitch into the other side. Okay, so I'm going to keep doing that. So let's see, whoops, the next one, it would be right there, and then connect it on this side, slip stitch. Chain 2, go to the next one, which would be there, pull it through, lock it into place with a chain, and then connect with a slip stitch over on the other side. Lock it into place. Oops. And then a slip stitch there. Okay. Now go to the second to the last loop on this side. Pull it through the loop. Chain to lock it into place. And now I'm going to go into this corner and slip stitch. Okay. Chain 2. Now I'm going to have the last thing, which is the corner of this square. to connect them together. So I chain 2. Now I'm going to pull the loop through from back to front, and then lock it into place with 1 chain. And remember, this has got a 4 chain loop, so I'm going to chain 1 extra time, and then I'm going to go back into that corner space with a slip stitch. Okay, now see, we've done all 4 sides connected. Okay, oh, wrong way again, sorry. See, so I got all 4 squares connected. Okay, so now all I need to do is finish this edge and get to where we started over here, and it's just going to be the basic side, no connecting or anything. Okay, so we're going to chain 2, and we're going to go into the chain space with a slip stitch. Chain 2, go into the chain space with a slip stitch, and you're going to do it all the way across. Chain 2, slip stitch, 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 okay, chain 2, and then remember that we go into the corner, except the corner has already got the beginning, the chain slip stitch, chain 4 slip stitch. So we're going to slip stitch, but we're going to slip stitch into the first slip stitch, and that will complete the side. Okay, now I did get my scissors, so now I can show you how to finish off. I'm sure you know how to finish off. You just do it however you like to do it, but I like to snip off a bit of my yarn there, snip off, a few inches, and then I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm just going to pull it all the way through, and then I pull it tight. Okay, and then there is where I finished. Now, of course, I've got ends I've got to sew in now. But that's how you do it. And so you only have 2 different ways that you do it is whether or not, the way you do it, it depends on if you're only going to chain one side, if you're going to attach just one side, or if you need to attach 2 sides, okay? So I'm hoping that this is not confusing to you. To me, I think when I first learned it, I did think it was kind of difficult, but once you catch on to doing it, you can really do it pretty fast. It seems like it's difficult. It seems like it's more difficult to explain what to do than actually doing it. So give it a try. You can rewind the little sections and say, oh, now how did she do that? And I'm hoping that I didn't just totally confuse you by the way I was describing things. But I think that it may be a method that you will enjoy. I definitely enjoy doing this than having to do a whip stitch with a needle and yarn. I will put the squares together like that if I have to, but I'd much rather do it crocheting things together than having to sew them with the needle and yarn. But that's just me. Feel free to do it however you want to do it. But I just want to show you, this is my go-to method that I enjoy to do. I enjoy doing when I put squares together. Okay? So thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and hope to make more in the future. So we'll talk to you later. Bye!